Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly series of Shirim on the Heilig Zohar HaKadosh. And as we've said in nearly all of the Shirim on the Zohar, what we're trying to do in this series of Shirim is to bring out the light of drawing Moshe Rabbeinu down into the vessels of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, drawing the light of Chachma, the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, the clarity of vision, and schlepping it down into the apparent opposite of itself, which is the territory of Bina, which is the terrain in which Kalim reigns supreme and there's concealment and constriction. It's nearly the polar opposite to the Chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu. And to draw it down into the territory of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, where the water is forced to express its capacity even within the flaming territory of Bina and Rabbi Shimon. But the purpose for all of this is ultimately to bring out that light of Chachma and reveal that it can schlep itself down and reveal itself in lower territories. Ultimately, whenever we're dealing with the machlokas, or the apparent binary of Chachma and Bina, which rests at the core of everything, which is the Ikr Nukudas HaMachlokas, at the core of Brias HaOlam, which is the secret of Shalom, which is the secret of drawing out the lights of Keser, unifying Chachma and Bina. The question is never which is higher. Chachma is always higher. Moshe Rabbeinu is higher than Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Moshe Rabbeinu, the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, min hamayim mishisihu, that represents the ayin of Chachma, the ayin of Chachma, the bittul hamuchletas that takes shape when a person comes to realize that in the end of the day, everything that I can possibly say is nil and nothing and void in relationship to that which is actually true in terms of the absolute infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In that place, the only modality of spiritual functioning is a bittul b'metzias, is a fundamental self-nullification which comes about by way of the recognition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tzimtzum eina kapshuto. I never stopped being a spark within the bonfire. I never stopped being fundamentally rooted back in that original unity. In that territory of Chachma, that's the bittul behechlet, that's the secret of Einon Movado Yichadilah. That's always the purpose. The purpose is for an individual to go back up to that place and to nullify the concealment of this worldliness, to nullify the concealment of the self, to come back to always remembering that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achdus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation, and the perpetual revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite vitality that is being expressed down below in every element, in every facet of existence. This Hamshacha Yeshera from the Or Ein Sof Kavyachol, which is the secret of the Yichud Ilah, which is the Bittul B'Metzias, which is Einod Malvad. That's the tachlis. Moshe emes v'sora shlo emes. Masha hayahu shiyah. The light of Moshe Rabbeinu, the light of Chachma, the light of min hamayim mishisuhu, the light of clarity, the light of bittul, the light of ayin. All of that is ultimately the purpose of all things. But the problem with focusing on Chachma as the purpose of all things is that Chachma has to operate in accordance with certain boundary markers and with certain stipulations, so to say, because of the profound unity that Chachma expresses, because of the point of convergence between the Orus and the Kalim in the world of Atzilus, the level of Chachma, the illumination of Chachma is the illumination of such immense import of unity that it doesn't have the capacity in a revealed way to grapple with or contain within itself the opposite of itself, which is the apparent disunity of all things, or the vessels that come about by way of Bina. The problem with that, so to say, and all of these problems are just, that's the language that we have to use. All of this is trying to understand the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Leis Machshav Tfisa Klal, other than what the tzaddikim give us in their books, so that when we connect ourselves to the neshamos of these tzaddikim who gave us these books and they imprinted their neshamos within the ink, we can reawaken the reshimu of their neshamos within the ink, so that it's svos of dabros bekever, that the tzaddik is speaking in the kever kavyachol, and there's a neshika of ruchin beruchin, and the self as the reader is connecting to the neshama of the tzaddik as the author, which is ultimately just a reflection of the yichudim that a person has to cultivate. When we follow the lens and the words of our tzaddikim, the problem is that when Chachma is left alone, when Chachma doesn't express itself in its oppositional territory, so Chachma begins to be constricted in its self-sameness. Chachma has to appear unified, and if any moment is ununified, then it's the opposite of Chachma. And we see that the expression of Moshe Rabbeinu operates in this visceral kind of ascent and descent of being in or being out on a certain level. That's ultimately the question of Chachma. Chachma is all in or nothing, so to say, at least at first glance, and it can't tolerate concealment, and it can't tolerate the worlds of constriction. So the light of Moshe needs to undergo a certain transformation. It needs to be able to express itself in a lower place. And why? Because Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lios lo dir b'tachtonim. Because the ultimate purpose behind the unfathomability of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will that arose and awoke in the desire for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal his capacity towards limitation from within its latent pre-state of potential, non-existence potential within the infinite light. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that he wanted to create this place, the dir b'tachtonim, the hastar b'toch hastar, the choshech hakafel u'mechupel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that Chachma should be forced to reveal itself in a territory that appears to be opposite of itself. The infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to undergo a shift, and that shift that it has to undergo is the capacity to reveal itself even within the territory that seems to occlude its very presence, which is the secret of the territory of Bina in this world and the worlds of constriction, the territory of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the world of Torah Shabbal Peh, the world of forgetfulness, the world of Keren B'Yavne, that world of Bina, which is Osi Osi Avne, of an awakening towards the possibility of forgetfulness, which awakens this latent capacity in Rabbi Shimon to roar like a lion and to pull out the sword against all of his enemies and to declare with force and with strength, Ki lo tishkach mipi zaro. But that koyach of Rashbi is a koyach of Bina. That's the Butzina de Nahira. That's the constriction, that's the vessels, that's the mitigating factors that seem to occlude and conceal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's absolute infinitude. That's the Yichud Tata, the Baruch Shein Kavod Malchus Olam Vod, the worlds of concealment. And the light of the Zohar HaKadosh is schlepping the light of Moshe Rabbeinu of Chachma into the vessels of Bina, into the vessels of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Why? It's not because the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is more important. Adrabah Ibcha Mistaber, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai understands fundamentally that it's all about the Tzaddik Yesod Olam, which is Moshe Rabbeinu Raya Mehemna. Ella, there's a certain element of Moshe Rabbeinu that can't be misgala unless it undergoes the process of revealing itself throughout the constriction, the Nun Shari Bina of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai v'Chaverav. And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu understood. Moshe Rabbeinu, like we said last week, is Alisa Lamaram Shavisa Shavi Lakachos Matanos Levnei Adam. That Moshe Rabbeinu ascends on high to retrieve the capacity of the neshama of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because Chachma ultimately understands in its innermost point the necessity of descending down into the opposite of itself, which is the territory of constriction and the worlds of separation, and that place of concealment where darkness seems to occlude light and light seems to be splintered open with all sorts of minios, etc. Moshe Rabbeinu understands the need to descend down because the true potency of Chachma emerges when the unfolding of Bina comes to fruition from within the potency of Chachma, and it emerges in a state of opposition where now there's Chachma and Bina. Chachma is the true revelation of infinitude. Now Bina seems to stand in opposition to that. Yichad tata, splinteredness, havanas hadavar mitoch davar, Bina miklal de ta'a. Ein Adam lilmod Torah ela im kein nichshel behem. The whole world of the ups and the downs of the Torah Shabbal Peh. Again, the very same balance between the Eitz Chaim, which is Chachma, and the Eitz Hadas Tovara, which is the element of Bina. And now there's an apparent machlokes, but this machlokes is only there to be magdil the koyach of Moshe Rabbeinu. Because when Moshe Rabbeinu reveals himself to be able to reveal himself down within the vessels of Bina, now Chachma has revealed the hidden, hitherto unrevealed strength, which is the capacity to express itself even in its opposite. And in that place, Chachma undergoes a shift and a transformation because it extends itself even into the territory where it appears that it can't be found, within the territory of the Hava Mina of its Simsum. And in that place, the Hamshacha of Bina from within Chachma allows for the unfolding process of the Pnimius of Chachma to take shape, which brings us back to a place of Keser, which is the secret of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which is the Yichud of Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is the revelation of the greatness of Moshe specifically in and through the Kochos and the Kalim of Rabbi Shimon, with Rabbi Shimon ultimately revealing the potency of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is Ayla Akulana. And this is the secret of the Raya Mehemna in the Zohar Kadosh. We talk about Moshe Rabbeinu as Torah Shebechsav, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai as Torah Shabbal Peh, which is the extension of the light of Rabbi Akiva, his Rebbe, which becomes the inner world of Torah Shabbal Peh, which is the Zohar Kadosh. And that seems to be the opposite of Torah's Moshe. But buried within the Zohar HaKadosh itself, and especially in Parshas Pinchas, is the godless of Moshe. Specifically the godless of Moshe, which is Raya Mehemna, where Raya Mehemna, the light of the faithful shepherd, which is Moshe Rabbeinu being mislabesh within the Kalim of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. This is the purpose of Moshe Rabbeinu being Oile, L'Shamayim, L'Kachos, Shevi, to take Shevi, which is Shimon ben Yochai. That expresses itself fundamentally in the Raya Mehemna. Because in the Raya Mehemna, that's where we see the light of Moshe Rabbeinu coming through the vessels of Bina itself and revealing that light of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is Koilel Shnei Hafachim Mevasachas, Mi Bein Shnei Hakruvim, Rosh Tevos Moshe. Bein Shnei Hakruvim, that Moshe Rabbeinu is awake and Moshe Rabbeinu is asleep, Moshe Rabbeinu is above, Moshe Rabbeinu is below, all of the various Rosh Tevos of Moshe. Moshe represents that place of the unification of Chachma and Bina. This is the unfolding of Moshe within Eretz Yisrael, to be Mamshech Moshe Rabbeinu from Chutz La'aretz, which is where Chachma appears to not be able to tolerate concealment, and schlepping it down into Eretz Yisrael, which is the revelation that not only can Chachma express itself in concealment, but concealment is the very site in which the Pnimius of Chachma is going to be instigated and awoken, and it's from there, from the very depths, from the very bottom, from the very Evan Hashasiyah of it all, from the Tzimtzumim Rabim of this land of Eretz Yisrael Mamish. It's from that place that the light of Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be mavfik most intensely, and the secret of the Kotel HaMa'aravi, which is the unification of Moshe and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That remainder of the Beis Hamikdash, which becomes the point of the unfolding of Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. And that's the secret of Emasai Ka'asimar. When is Mashiach Tzidkenu going to come? Mar is the unification of Moshe and Rashbi. And that unfolds in the Raya Mehemna in the most potent way. Raya Mehemna is also Rosh Tevos Reish Mem. It's Rashbi Moshe. It's the same Roimim Muskel. And so what we're going to look at, the Iker excitement is going to be in trying to understand what we just said in terms of Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the secret of the Raya Mehemna. But the Heiliger of Pinchas Karitzer says everywhere when he's discussing Bein HaMetzarim, based on the Arizal, that the Meitzar, that the constriction is a constriction of the mind. It's a moichin dekatnus. It's a moichin dekatnus to the degree that in these days there's an awakening of a certain concealment that abides within the world and within an individual who's paying attention. That now there's much more of a tendency and an awakening to the mournful awareness that something is not right, which is why everybody awakens for Tikkun Chatzos in these days. Because each and every one of us has the capacity to tune in and realize, wow, there's something missing, there's Beis HaMikdash missing. And these days of Kadnus are days where there's a certain preoccupation with stuckness. There's a preoccupation with galus. There's a preoccupation with what it means to be a human being who's stuck very often in what feels to be a constricted mindset as a result of being a neshama in the guf, as a result of being a creature that lives in the day and the night, of somebody with good and bad habits, of somebody with moments that they're on and moments that they're off. This up and down kafatella type experience. That the katnas hamoichin makes a person feel like we're grasping at straws sometimes, and that every breakthrough seems to be only momentary and bring to another letdown where a person feels even more stuck in the thing that they're trying to break free from. And in any form or shape that these elements take place in a person's life, each and every person in accordance with their own heart, with their own honesty, and their own grappling with the inner workings of self and the secret of tshuva pnimis and the perpetual process of working our stuff out within ourselves and drawing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into it so that we can become Bali Tshuva Amitim. And one of the elements of Katnas HaMoichin is slumber, is sleep. Now, when the Zohar HaKadosh is talking about states of sleep, when the Zohar is talking about nocturnal states where the self is no longer conscious and the body is ultimately the one that seems to be in charge. Now, there's a way of reading these elements of the Zohar HaKadosh, and the Raya Mehemna is describing the actual experiences of sleep. But there's also, for our permission's sake, which is the ability to abstract in the secret of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, which is Mebasari Echazen, that we have the ability to interpret the words of the tzaddikim and each and every unfolding stage of the Yechidei Hadoros in accordance with the kalim of our times and the kalim of our own necessity. So we have the ability to abstract these seemingly objective states and subjectifies them to create this sense of frames of mind that one can live with, even if they're not in a sleep-like state. Meaning to say that sleep and wakefulness in the Zohar doesn't just mean actual physiological sleep or physiological wakefulness, but it could also mean states of sleep, states of slumber in the mind. As we know that the mind can be asleep all the time, and we see this, that there's a chruz, there's an announcement that the Zohar Kadosh and the Raya Mehemna are fundamentally engaged in, which is the light of Rabbi Shimon's generation, saying, Vai lahai dara, woe to those individuals who are unaware of what's taking shape, who are unaware that they're asleep. So we see that this sleepfulness is not the bemoaning of the fact that they're asleep. It's a bemoaning of the fact that it's ani yeshena. There's a certain element of the self that has fallen into a state of slumber. And instead of looking at the state of slumber as something that has to be understood objectively, it becomes a spiritual hue through which a person experiences this world. And the states of slumber as described in the Zohar Kadosh, and the unfolding processes of slumber, and the awakening, raging nature of the body, and the seemingly descent of the body into a certain nocturnal, natural process, which seems to be in opposition to the mind's and the neshama's attempt to overlay control over the body. There's a certain unresting or an unrest at the heart of the body in a state of nocturnal slumber. And these states of mind and these states of the body need not be objectified and minimized and kind of contained into their particular containers, but rather they represent states of mind that apply throughout. And so anytime that the Zohar Kadosh describes certain states of mind, nocturnal states of mind, we have the ability of abstracting them back into frameworks of wakeful processing, that a person can be awake and asleep at the same time. And so when the Zohar describes the dangers or the processes that take shape to the vulnerable soul in the process of slumber, so we don't have to be asleep in order for these ideas to be reasonable. They don't have to be the metaphysics of slumber. They can represent states of wakeful thinking, frames of mind that the Zohar Kadosh is giving us insight into. And it's specifically now in the times of Katnas HaMoichin, in the times of Bein HaMitzarim, of Kol Rodfeha Hisiguha Bein HaMitzarim, that there's a certain sense of being chased. There's a certain sense of nocturnal unrest or a dislodging from the stability of the clarity of the day and an entry into the chayos haya'ar, those beasts of the forest and nighttime and the bewildering sounds of this worldliness and all of its concealment. And it's specifically there that the self has to redevelop its grounding, and we have to draw down more and more strength from the neshama, more and more koach from neshama shenasata b'tahirahi, so that we can process ourselves through the darkness and learn how to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu within the darkness itself. That's the Zman of Katnus, that's the Hamtakas Adinim that is necessary in the times of Bein HaMitzarim, when we are chased and accosted by the thoughts of our minds collectively, individually. And as the Heiliger of Pinchas said, it's the Zman of moving in deeper and deeper into the Katnus so that we can be mamtik the Katnus. Part of what we're discussing ultimately, this processing of the Katnus, this processing of what it means to be asleep, and how we can begin to see it as a full-on conscious modality of thinking, is what the Torah's Chacham teaches us ultimately, which is that we used to think that there was godless amoichin and katnas amoichin, and godless amoichin is expansive consciousness where I'm okay and things are okay and the world is okay and everything is making sense and I can see from here to there and I know what's going to be in the comfort of my mind. That's godless amoichin, expansivity, and whether things are going my way or not doesn't make much of a difference. With godless amoichin, there's anava, there's bittul, there's a hakara, that everything is exactly the way it needs to be. But then there's katnas amoichin, and the constricted mind, which sees things off kilter, which sees things as disjointed, alienation from the self, from the other, from God, from all of the different things that we need so desperately in order to find calmness. In a time of katnas hamoichin, we feel disoriented. And we used to think that that wasn't moichin. The only stage of moichin was godless hamoichin. But katnas hamoichin is the absence of moichin. It's just the residual lights of moichin. Until the tzaddikim, the rashash, and the Torah's Chacham came to reveal to us that which is most explicit within the writings of the Arizal, which is ultimately that Ein Silik Moichin Oilam. There's never a time where a person is without Moichin. So what does it mean to say that a person is Katnas HaMoichin? Well, Katnas HaMoichin is a full-on, full-shaped expression of Moichin that reveal themselves by way of Katnas itself. Instead of seeing Godless HaMoichin as or and Katnas HaMoichin as absence, we begin to see Godless HaMoichin as an or of Godless, and Katnas HaMoichin as an or of Katnas. It's a Moichin of Vak. It's a Moichin of process. It's a moichin of unfinished business, so to say, where a person is working their way up from within concealment, trying to uncover more threads of connectivity, as opposed to moichin de gadlus, which is where a person is not struggling for connectivity. They live in the connectivity. This goes back to one of my favorite maisim from the Rebbe Shlita, which is when he went to his Rebbe, the Kretschnefer Rebbe, and he said, I have moichin de katnus. And his Rebbe looked at him and he said, who said that there's such a thing as moichin de katnus? And what the Heilige Rebbe of Yitzchak Meir Morgenstern Shlita describes is that, what do you mean there's no such thing as moichin de katnus? The totality of the Arizal and his writings and the writings of the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmidim is all filled with katnus hamoichin. So what does it mean when his Rebbe says to him, there's no such thing as katnus hamoichin? Who told you there's such a thing as katnus hamoichin? What it means is exactly what we're saying, that katnus hamoichin is avada katnus, but it's still moichin. It's a full shape of connectivity, meaning to say a person can find HaKadosh Baruch Hu within the katnus. And the Bein HaMitzarim is ultimately the secret of what the Kazhanitzer Magid says in the name of the Heilige Magid, that Kol Rodfeha his Siguha Bein HaMitzarim, that all those who chase after HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all those who chase after Yud Kei, the Chachma and the Bina, the illumination of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we're going to see, the nocturnal reality is the loss of Chachma and Bina. It's the loss of that original flash of wisdom and the capacity to draw forth with new, hitherto unrevealed insight from within that flash of insight. In a place of katnas amoichin, in a place of churban, there's a departure of those moichin. And what we're coming to find is that no, in truth, kol rod feha, everybody who chases after Yud K, everyone who chases after trying to find the residual lights of moichin, even when we feel that we have none, hisigu haben hamitzarim, we're going to find it within the days of confinement, the days of the narrow straits, because it's specifically when we uncover the fact that moichin dekadness is a full-on, fully developed process of moichin, of consciousness. It just happens to reveal itself by way of smallness, so then we know that there's no process in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu's full expression is not found, and it enables us to process the katnus, the nocturnal states of experience, and to protect ourselves, and to follow with the intensity and the true power of our souls, which is the ability to have bechira. Zak the Heilige Raya Mehemna and Daf Reish Chaf Beis in Parshas Pinchas. Amaraya Mehemna. Vailoin lebedei nasha de inun atimin liba. Stimin einen de yoda. Woe to those individuals, woe to human beings who have closed hearts and closed eyes. The heart is the place of bina. The eyes are the place of chachma. Libi ra'a harbar chachma. The heart has to be the receptacle for chachma. Chachma has to reveal itself within the heart so that chachma and bina can be unified together. These two kochos of chachma and bina, Abba ve'ima, these are the two messengers, the two malachim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends a yid down into this world with in order to make order out of chaos. That the chachma enables me to see the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu everywhere, like we said, the light of Moshe, the yichudi ilah, the illumination of bitul muchletas, and bina, the heart, enables me to process this world by way of the fragmented space of emotions and the separate territory in which chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, hod, yisod all splinter out into their own processes. These are the two tools that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us in order to live. But woe to those individuals who find themselves closed off into themselves with their hearts closed off and their eyes closed and velo yadin, and they don't know. What don't they know? What is the absence of chachma and bina? What is the absence of moichin leave a person not knowing? What they don't know is the kad asi laila tarin de gehenim is pachtu, de ihu mara. What they are not aware of is that when the nighttime comes, when the nocturnal state of things descends upon the world, the gates of hell are opened up. And the gates of hell represent bitterness. The gates of hell, each and every person has gates of hell within themselves, just as every person has Sha'ari Yushalayim within themselves and Sha'ari Gan Eden within themselves. And ultimately, the only purpose for Gehenna within a person's experience is for us to learn that Gehenna is just an extension of Gan Eden. And when we can be Mezachich, that territory of Gehenna, when we could clarify those psachim, those openings to Gehenna in this world, as the Sodi Sharm says, we have the ability of revealing the Pia Pascha v'Chachma, and we can be metaking all of the concealment. As Rabbi Nachman said, sometimes this world looks like hell, that there's gates of hell that open up upon a person when they fall into a nocturnal state of things, when a person's mind and a person's heart are separate from them, or they don't have chachma, they don't have bina anymore. And what are these gates of hell? These gates of hell are mara. These gates of hell are bitterness, the embittered spirit, this embitterment, this frustration, this looking at the world and saying it's not the way it should be, this processing of the world when we don't have chachma and bina, when we don't have the train rein delay misparshim, when we don't have those two bonds of connectivity and the wings of the soul that enable us to function. So then this world appears like Gehenna and it feels bitter. There's a bitterness. It's a marirus. It's a brokenness. The ashnin delay de mispashtin malkin admoicha. And the smoke and the pillars of smoke that ascend from within these gates of Gehenna, which is the bitterness of the spirit, they extend themselves upwards until they come to the mind and they blot out the mind. Meaning to say, the descent into the nocturnal state of affairs is where the mind becomes cloudy, when a person, because they don't have chachma, they don't have bina anymore, or at least they feel that they don't have chachma, they feel that they don't have bina because they have not yet learned the secret of finding a Kadosh Baruch Hu in katnus itself. So it feels like the smoke of Gehenna is blotting out the mind, blotting out the eyes. The kamachelin the Yetzahara mispashtin b'chol ivrin the gufa, and how many potencies and how many forces and strengths of the Yetzahara, of the Nefesh HaBahamis, of the natural tendency towards the melancholic drive and the drives towards physicality and the desire to feed the dopamine scale within our minds. All of these kochos are unleashed upon the self. They express themselves in every part of the body. The body keeps score. So once a person finds themselves in a state of concealment because they feel that their chachma and their bina are gone. And then they begin to feel that the gates of hell are opening up. And from that place comes this bitterness. And the smoke of this bitterness has the ability to go up and it has the ability to cloud the mind. And when the mind is clouded, it's specifically then that the strengths of the Yetzer Hara, which seek nothing other than causing a person to go down the road where they're going to feel bad about themselves and feel distant from God, God forbid, it unleashes itself upon the body. There's anarchy unleashed upon the world. V'tarin de'ihu liba de Gan Eden mistamimin. And the gate, which is the gates to Gan Eden, are closed off because the gates of Gehenna are covering over the gates of Gan Eden. That innermost point of comfort that the mind knows in moments of Moich and the Gadlus, when the sunlight of intellect is illuminated and a person is able to see the Seichel Shebachol Davar, there's no concern over hell. But now that the smokestacks of hell are ascending upwards and they're blotting out the mind, the gates of Gan Eden, which are the heart, are closed off and they're covered over. It's not that they're gone. It's not that they're ever locked to the degree that we can't enter back in, but they're just concealed. And they're not opening up anymore. And generally speaking, all of the light of the eyes comes through the heart, meaning to say the fullest expression of Chachma is only when it's schlepped down into the Moichin of Bina, so that there can be a unity of Chachma and Bina, which is Moshe and Rashbi, like we said. But if the heart is closed off, then the light of the eyes cannot descend down through the heart because there's no Tachlis to Chachma without Bina, just as there's no possibility of Bina without Chachma. And as a result of the closure of this heart, because the gates of Gehenna are opened over the gates of Gan Eden, as a result of this, Inun Einun Mistamimin. Inun Einun Mistamimin, the eyes are closed. So not only is the Bina gone, not only do we feel that our hearts are closed, but our eyes are closed. Begin Deloy Mistaklin Beilin Mazikin the Inun Lamed Yud Tav V'Lei Shaltin Benuhurin the Liba the Inun Malachin the Mispashtin B'Cholei Varin Ka'anfin the Ilana. And what we do in this moment, what a person has to do in this moment, what a person has to do when they feel that the kolchos of darkness are ascending upon themselves, upon the world, upon their processing. So what they have to do is they have to double down into themselves. We have to double down. We have to lean into ourselves. We have to embrace the closedness of the heart. We have to embrace the closedness of those gates of Gan Eden. We have to not look at the negativity. We have to not look at those kochos of chaos that unleash upon the world in the nighttime of the mind. Because they have no control and they have no power over the illumination of the heart, which are the malachim of the heart that extend outwards. Just as the heart sends blood throughout the body, the heart, B'pnimiyah, sends the malachim of the guf throughout the body. All of the limbs extend from the heart like the branches from a tree. L'chol sitra b'hahu zimna. In that moment, inun kulan nuhurin stimen beliba. In this moment, because there's a collapsing inwards, and when we feel that we're under attack by this concealment because the mind is not with us and the gates of hell are open, and in this moment there's a bitterness, what the mind has to do is it has to close the gates of the heart. It has to lean inwards. It has to etch itself inwards and make a chakika in the heart, which is to protect all of the malachim of lelev, all of the defika deliba, all of that nukuda hapanimis of the heart that continues to persist and exist even underneath the cover of the darkness of that smokestack of hell that is ascending from those gates. It's protected. All of the light is concealed there within the heart, and they all gather to the heart. And all of the chayas of the guf, when a person goes to sleep, all of that extension of the neshama that now feels that it doesn't have strength because all of the pathways are clogged up, and the heart is clogged up, and the mind is clogged up. What does the neshama do? What does all of that expression that we had throughout the day do? It retreats back into the heart, just like the Yonah, when it's under attack, it descends and it ascends right back to its place. Mi Tainli Kayona goes back to its encampment, which is why Bnei Yisrael are compared to the Yonah, because the Yonah understands that even though it might not be authentic, even though it might be B'derech Onah, nevertheless, in moments of constriction, in moments of concealment, there's a hiskavsus, there's a gathering together of all of this strength and reducing it all back by way of tzimtzum into the pnimius of the heart. Noach va'asisa, just like Noach HaTzadik did with his wife in the times of the Mabul, because nighttime is like a Mabul, where all of the concealment descends over the body, and it seems that the mind is no longer in control. But Noach, what does he do? Like the Yonah, he goes into the Teva. He protects himself within the womb of Bina. He enters into that place of the Rishimu, of the Chaloim, of Moichin, the godless within Moichin, the Katnas. As Rav Tzadok HaKohen Meleblin points out, based on the Arizal, that the secret of sleep is the remainder of Moichin, the godless within Moichin, the Katnas. It's the secret of Ein Siluk Moichin Oilam. And we retreat back into that innermost point of the heart, like Noach, who ascends onto the Teva with every species, v'chol min v'min, the alu ime beteva, that in moments of concealment we have to be nichnas el hateva, we have to protect ourselves, we have to enter into the irmiklet of the heart, into the innermost point of the heart, into the reusa deliba, into the nakuda hapnimius, the bas ayin of the lave that remains even after the moichin are gone, even after avi ve'imi azavuni, even after chachman bina depart, and the mind's eye and the heart's emotional capacity, they descend away from a person. But nevertheless, in that moment, the Hashem aspeni, there's a nakuda of keser that's niskala, that's above and beyond the koyach of Chachma and Bina that can only be revealed in the retreat back into that protective space of Tevas Noach, which is the uncovering of the Nakuda of Keser. We run into the Ikr Nakuda, the Bas Ayin of the heart, and we protect ourselves. And at that place, umazikin the miskabrim al kol evarim de gufa kemei tufna de gavru alaya to ama, and the assault upon the body, and those nocturnal feelings that when a person loses a little bit of the grip of the calmness of the mind and the hyper focus on the attention needed for emuna and for bitachon and for yichudim and all of the good things that we can do with our mind, in those moments when we're feeling constricted, when the gates of hell begin to open up in our own minds and there's that bitterness that ascends and it seems to cover over the gates of Gan Eden which rest upon our hearts, so in that moment it feels like the floodwaters are ascending, and that koach that is expressing itself on the body, that resistance that the body feels, the exhaustion, the laziness, the uffer, the atzlus and the atzlus, and all of the difficult elements that the body feels when the mind is not with it. It's like the floodwaters that are ascending upwards and banging on the teva. Just as there's a teva within the heart, which is every element of the neshama retreats back into the innermost point of the heart, but the body continues to bear the assault of those waves which ascended tesvav amma. And why is it tesvav amma? What is the assault upon the body? What is this constriction? What is the body feeling in this pain where the mind is embittered and it's no longer able to function in the alignment that it truly wants to? The reason that it is 16 amos is that it's 15 amos that the waters ascended because they correspond to the yud k. They correspond to the first two letters of the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because all of the concealment comes from what? It comes from the silu kamoichin. It comes from the apparent absencing of the mind. It comes from apparent katnas amoichin, which is what? It's the loss of chachma and it's the loss of bina. And as a result of the loss of the mind and that entrance into the shigayon of what appears to be the absence of moichin, that's when the waves ascend over the body, and it seems that the body is going to collapse under the unfelt process of all of it, under the concealment of the experience, because there's a concealment of Yud K. Like we said, Kol Rodfeha his sigua beina mitzarim. At the beginning, it appears that the Yud K is gone, but then there's a Venahapaychu Asher Yishlu to Ayudim Hema B'Seinayim, that it's dafka from within the Mina Meitzar Karasiya Anani B'Merchavka, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers us from within the concealment itself, and from within the gates Hamavis, we have the ability of uncovering that Yud K, but at first it appears that it's gone. And so those 15 amos of water ascend over the body because the Yud K seems to be gone, and we're entering into a Meichem Katnas. We're entering into a slumber. We're entering into a sleep and unconsciousness of the soul. Yud K Megufa. V'ishtari ilaim beloy re'iyah v'shmiya. So this Yud K, where is this Yud K leaving from? We already know from the Adir Bamarom or the past few weeks that we have no access to a real Yud K. So what is the Yud K that's leaving? Where is the Chachman Bina leaving from? It's from Elokim. Elokim is the process where we can draw down HaKadosh Baruch Hu into our lives in a revealed way. And Elokim is the osios of Aleph Lamed Mem, which is Elim, which is speechlessness, which is concealment, which is constriction, which is the exile state of the nocturnal processes. And when that Yud K leaves the Shem Elohim, what we're left with is Elim. We're left with speechlessness, a certain muteness of the self when it no longer has the capacity to speak and to whisper to each Aver, and to speak and to whisper to every part of the body, and to be able to say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we're still with you, even when we feel that you're not with us in this concealed moment. And that Yud K, that ascendance of the waves of the sea that seem to assault the body, they represent the Yud K that leaves the body. It represents the Yud K, those Moichin, the Chachma and Bina that was originally there, and now it leaves us, and we're apparently in a state of Moichin Dekatness. And all that remains is an Aleph Lamed Mem below Re'iyah Vishmiya, without Chachma, without Bina, without the Yud, which is Chachma, and the eyes, and without the Hey, which is Bina, which is hearing. We're left with just a guf. We're left feeling like we've concaved onto the self, and we're protecting ourselves in that innermost Kodesh HaKadoshim of the heart. We have no more ability to smell, and we have no more ability to speak. B'raza demila ne'elamti dumya. Ne'elamti dumya. When there's a silencing, a dome of the Yud K, which is Dumya, so then there's a process of Ne'elamti. I fall into a place of speechlessness. And speechlessness is the heart of all nightmares, where a person feels that they can't convey what needs to be conveyed to the other, to themselves, to their loved ones, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And a person is continuously saying everything but the one thing that needs to be said, connecting to everything but the one thing that needs to be connected to. That's the Ne'elamti Dumya, that I fall into a place of speechlessness. Dumya, doim yud k, it's the silencing of the yud k, the loss of moichin. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that it's within this process of descending down into the slumber, perchance to dream, we uncover a deep, uncovered secret of that we're with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even in the concealment. Kahahu zimna. In that time of concealment, chamesha soy amma gavru bezikin al gufa. In that moment of concealment, it's almost like there's 15 amos of water that are ascending over the body. When the body feels that the gates of Gehenna are open, when the body feels embittered, when the mind is losing its grip on the body, where the nefesh elokis is losing its ability to direct the nefesh of Bahamas, and what the body begins to feel is tired and exhausted and in pain, and all of the difficult marks that exile carries with itself. V'inun kekisla l'uge, ukegavna denoyach shalech hasayoina b'shlichusa. And just as Noach goes into the teva to protect himself, and Noach sends a Yonah out to see if it's safe to go out, so too the body which gathers itself into the innermost point of the heart also has a Yonah. And what's that Yonah? That Yonah is the neshama. The neshama is the thing that elevates us, that gives us the capacity to uncover the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even within exile. Yonasi tamasi. I might not be able to connect to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the level of Moichin the Godless, but at the same point, I have the ability of connecting to you on the level of Moichin the Katnas. In order for the body to survive in this world, in order for the body to survive in this concealment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends down a neshama and a ruach into the human being. And as a result of this, tzarich barnash lapakte lematrenuse, we have an eitzah that we're given. The only way we're able to survive in this world is because of the neshama that you've given us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so too, when the nighttime comes, when that concealment of the self ascends upon the world, so it's our job to restore our connection and our awareness of where the neshama comes from is by giving it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As it says, B'yadcha adchi ruchi, in your hands I give over my ruach. Roshei Tevos Be'er, that when a person enters into the nighttime externality and the existential quandaries of nocturnality in this world, the only thing to do is B'yado afkid ruchi, to give ourselves over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu completely, to throw ourselves with all of our strength through Mesiras Nefesh of Kriyat Shema Lamita into that Be'er Ha'elyon, into that ascendant Nakuda of the Bas Ayin, which is the Malchus, which is Rachel, which is Biyado Avkid Ruchi. That's where we restore ourselves. That's where we return ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we relinquish control. We relinquish the attempt to have power. The Imhi Asira B'chove the Gufe Biyode the Chelin the Yitzhara. But if a person is still stuck and caught up in all of the constriction of their day-to-day transgressions and the struggles, and we've not yet prepared ourselves to properly throw ourselves over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then God forbid our mind gets caught up in all the elements of the Yetzer Hara. Maksiv biyadcha afkid ruchi, pedasi oisi Hashem elemas. Pasuk says, to you, into your hands I give over my soul. Redeem me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a God of truth. It's only when we're connected to truth, it's only when we're connected to that which needs to be revealed within our lives, that the offering over our neshama is going to give us strength. And then when we enter into that place of nocturnality, what happens here in this territory, where the mind or the heart is no longer with us in the ascribed way that it's been with us throughout our wakeful days, what is awoken is that power of imagination, that nocturnal power of imagination, that chalom. And yes, a chalom is always either a chalom al yedei malach or a chalom al yedei shade in accordance with how our thoughts are. And sometimes the imagination can build just as the imagination can destroy, just as Rabbi Nachman teaches us, "Matama amin sheyochalim lekalkel ta'amin sheyochalim takein." If you believe that you can break, then you must believe that you can fix, because Amuna and Dimyon are one and the same, and therefore if Dimyon works one way, it could work the other way as well. We have to always be careful with Dimyon. But something is unlocked. This secret of Keser Elyon Olav Nikra, which is the Nakuda of the Bas Ayin, the Shachris Ayin, that tiny infinitesimal black dot of the eye, which once everything has been condensed back into itself, is revealed as the Nikuda Sarashimu, that which remained after the Tzimtzum. And in that place, in the collapsing of all of the expressivity of the self, we have the ability of uncovering that pinpointed potency of the self, which can express itself by way of absolute Mesiras Nefesh. It's the Nakuda of the Malchus of Keser of Malchus. It's the Emuna in our Mesiras Nefesh for Emuna. That's what's being uncovered in the nighttime, and that's what's being uncovered through the processes of Chalomos. And if a person merits to utilize their imagination properly and to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu through this process of the descent into Moichan Dekatnis, Kol Misharyin the Yetzer Toiv Kula, all of the kolchos of the Yetzer Tov, all of the positive strengths and the positive elements in existence are there to help the person. Upneihem kepneihem prudos lakable upneihem v'kanfeihem prudos lakabel ruche, and their arms are opened wide to receive this neshama that's ascending up. When we ascend into that place of the dimyon, biyad hanaviyam adame, if we are ascending properly and we're protecting our bodies and we're preparing ourselves to double down on that innermost point of the heart in moments of constriction and moments of concealment, instead of letting our bodies take the reins, we uncover that innermost point and we collapse ourselves into our hearts. Then what's going to happen is we're going to ascend into a higher point of the mind, and all of the ruach, and all of the malachim, and all of the giluyim, and all of the gvanim, and all of the different shades and colors of divine revelation are going to be there to help us ascend higher and higher, to bring us to the place of the chayin de korsaya, to the place of the kisei hakavod, back to the shorish of nitzmas Yisrael, the teiman chazikama chazyoinos demyoinos umaros the nevuah. And it's there that a person is going to come and see from within the chazyon laila, from within that translational space of the aspakla. A person is going to be exposed to visions of visions and imaginings of imaginings and scenes upon scenes. Chazyonis demyonis sumaros, which is Rosh Tevos Chemed, the stay Chemed, the fields of pleasantness, is the secret of Chazyonis demyonis sumaros, the nevuah, that the heart, when it ascends upwards into itself and it protects itself because it's lost Chachma and Bina, it's specifically there in the Chaloy Madaber Bo. It's specifically in there, in the heart of the dream, that a person is going to be able to uncover the potency of imagination. Begin da ukma. And this is why Chazal tell us, the chaloim echad meshishim b'nevuah, that a dream is ultimately just 1/60th of nevuah. Zohar Kadosh continues, what's the reward of the soul as it enters back into this place of Alma Da'asi? And we've said so often that in Chazal, in Bavli, in Yerushalmi, we have an inyan of Olam Haba, the world that is to come. But in the Zohar Kadosh and in Medrash, very often we find the secret of Alma Da'asi, the world that is perpetually arriving, the world that is perpetually dripping into our minds at this very moment. It's not a future that needs to be waited for in order to be experienced, but rather it's a future that's present at hand in order to be unlocked, just as the Zohar Kadosh said before about the gates of Gan Eden that rest within the heart at every moment, except they get covered over and concealed. The question is, what does it mean to draw down the schar of the neshama ba'alma da'asi when we enter into this nighttime process, when we enter into this place where we have to uncover the depths of the soul beyond Chachma and Bina, when it's Avi ve'imi azavuni v'Hashem yasbeni, and we have to descend down into that innermost point of the Nukuda hapnimiyah shebelev? What does it mean to draw down the schar to the neshama ba'alma da'asi? Mai have, what is it? What happens is that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is malbish the neshama in a cloud. And again, we're talking about states of mind for right here, right now, coping mechanisms for right here, right now. that HaKadosh Baruch Hu engarbs us in a cloud. A cloud is a place of concealment. Moshe nigash ala arvel ki shamu elokim, as Rabbeinu tells us. That Moshe Rabbeinu enters into the concealment because it's specifically there that he's going to come to behold HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu garbs us in anane kavod kedkadmisa, teil b'mara, and we enter into a palace of visions, the iu kegavna de gufa kolel beramach evarim, and it's in the shape of a body, it's a reflection of the self, and therefore it takes shape in accordance with what the self is, me b'sari echaza, oifachi teil b'mara, kliel b'matayim v'arben shimnin pekudin. So to us, we ascend into this Mara, into this mirror, this space of visions, this aspeklarya dinahura, this dimyon of the mind, that as a result of the absence of Chachma and Bina is forced to try and cultivate spiritual functioning in a space where there is none. And in this place that is combined of all of the 248 parts, Viramach, Nehirin, the Mesparshin, Mehahu Mara, and all of the 248 lights, the lights of Avram Avinu, that ascend out of this place to Itmar be v'yomer imye neviim neviichem Hashem b'mara elav isvada. That if you're going to be like a navi, and this is what's happening each and every night, a person gets to taste what it's going to be like to be a navi by being mapshit ourselves from the chachma and bina of what we thought we needed, and entering into a place of alma da'asi, of entering into that innermost nakuda of the heart, biyad and deviyam adama, biyado afkid ruchi. In that place, B'mara Elav Isvada, HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to us specifically from within the Mara, specifically from within a Mara, which can't be a true depiction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mamela, it's the veil that separates us from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ulavushin da Anane Kavod, and it comes through the garments of the Anane Kavod, meaning to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Giloi to us is always by way of Halbasha, it's always by way of engarbing, just as Moshe Rabbeinu engarbs himself within the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. V'ra'isa l'skor bris oilam da aspeklarya ha'me'ira. When it comes to the true memory of that covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reveal to the tzaddikim amitim, to the neviim amitim, to the navi of Moshe Rabbeinu, that's going to be the aspeklarya ha'me'ira. That's going to be the clarified lens where it doesn't have to be necessarily through all of the levushim and the constriction. But b'chaloi madaber bo'ida ba'aspeklarya deloy nuhura. That what's taking shape at nighttime in this residual experience of the Moichin, the godless, within Moichin, the Katnas, we're experiencing the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from within the Aspeklarya de Loinuhura, from a cloudy lens, from within the Levushim, that's composed not of the 248 mitzvahs aseh, but rather it's illuminated by 365 lights, which is the gematria of Yeshena, Ani Yeshena v'libi air. It's the process of what I can't grasp. La'asid lavo in the aspeklarya de nuhura, a person is going to see it by way of a positive expression. It's going to be by way of the 248 mitzvahs aseh of ahava. But nowadays for us, b'chaloi medaber bo, it's going to be by way of the 365 mitzvahs lois aseh, which is the gematria of Yeshena, Ani Yeshena. I'm sleeping in this world. I'm asleep in this world. One is for this world and one is for the next world. In this world, we get to experience this chalom. We get to experience this process of ascending back up into that Mara Elav Isvada, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being megala himself to us specifically by way of the Mara. And the Asid Lavo, there's going to be the illumination of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself to us by way of the Aspeklarya Dinuhura. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created us in two ways, one that's set up for the future and one that is for now. And just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu split us between Etzelim and Demus, he also created for ourselves two gardens, Train Ganin, the Itmar Layu HaYoshevet Baganim, that there's two gardens. There's the garden of the future and there's the garden of right now. Hayoshevet Baganim, Yu Ilas Al Kula, that Gan Eden of the future is ascendant above everything. Kiloira Isam Kol Tmuna. In that place, it's as if there's no image, no vision, that Aspeklarya Dinuhura that's going to be revealed when it's only Moichin the Godless. But for now, we're seeing an image, we're beholding something by way of constriction, by way of concealment, by way of the imaginings of the mind. But Tmunas Hashem Yabit, to behold the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which Rabbeinu already told us in Torah Reish Yud Beis, is Biyad and Deviyam Adama. It's only through the Dimyon itself. And so for us, for now, it's still the Avodah of the Dimyon. To come out of Mitzrayim with all of these levushim of the Ananei HaKavod. But in the future, But in the future, Ba'ahu Zimna, when it's no longer going to be this process of trying to behold the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu by way of the constriction. In the future, when it's going to be really Olam Haba, Yiskayim bebarnash, what's going to come about? Lo yichanef oid merecha, legabich, b'shtayim yichas apanav. There's no longer going to be the concealment. There's no longer going to be the need to see things by way of the aspaklaya deloy nuhara. There's no longer going to be the need to dig down deep into the innermost point of the heart and uncover the fount of imagination, which is the capacity to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even in the katnas hamoichin. In the future, it's going to be v'halyu einayach royas as marayach, that there's going to be a full revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even though that's only going to be relative to the previous revelations, but relative to that which has not yet been revealed, it's still going to be only a partial revelation. Nevertheless, there's going to be an element of a perfectibility that comes about in the secret of Lo Yechanef Oid Marayach Legabich. We're going to see things clearly. Mesitra de Ilan Maris Moshe Rabbeinu Rabban Shal Neviim V'Chachamim. And Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be Zoicha from the Maros of the future and the Maros of right now. And so what we're trying to do with the Zohar Kadosh is simply to cultivate a little bit of a consciousness of what it means to be alive in the nighttime, what it means to be a person who has nighttime moments within themselves, whether it's day or night, that there's the element of the Laila. And ultimately, the whole tachlis of the Laila is to be nesapich into a secret of Laila Kiyom Ya'ir, that the light contains deeper secrets than the day itself has. The Chavraya are always walking along the roads at nighttime. The territory of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the territory of the nighttime. The territory of Tarsh Balpeh is the territory of the nighttime. Me'em Masai Kairin Shema Ba'arvis, the secret of Tfilas Arvis, Rishus, how to find the Kadosh Baruch Hu within the Chalal Rishus, in that territory where we don't have the Moichin, but nevertheless we have the ability of uncovering that hidden third element of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, that after Chachman bin Aliv, Av v'imi azavuni, it's specifically Hashem Yasfeni. Chol Radfeha, Hi Siguha, Bein HaMetzarim. Dafka Bein HaMetzarim, we have the ability of uncovering the true secret of Yud Kei, which is Chachman Bina, which is that Ein Silak Moichin Oilam, is that even when I'm in a state of Katnus, I have a full expression of Moichin themselves, and through that we can be Zoichet to Moichin Amitim, of Moichin the godless of Binyan Beis HaMikdash Be'ezras Hashem.